Over the past year or so, what would you say has been your biggest challenge?
In February, we hit some major headwinds. We know what's our plan 3 years out? What's our plan 10 years out? What do we ultimately want to achieve? Yet we're about to hit something here that's going to be challenging, and we have to figure out how to get through this period. And we're going to persevere. We're going to win. It's not going to look like this. It's going to look like this. It can be a little lumpy on the way up. Jim Stockdale said, you must never confuse the faith that you'll prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be.
This is Caitlin Blundell, and I'm joined today by Victor Hyman. Victor is the Executive Director of ClimateCare, Canada's largest cooperative of residential HVAC contractors. Before joining ClimateCare in August 2020, he spent 9 years in various management roles with a leading national HVAC wholesale distributor and 5 years managing a Toronto area HVAC contractor. Victor is involved in several industry volunteer roles. He is the chair of the HRAI Policies and Priorities Committee and has served as a member of the CMPX Show Committee, the HRAI Committee on Emerging Trends in HVACR, and was chair of the HRAI GTA chapter. He was the industry co-chair of National Resource Canada's Market Transformation Roadmap Space Heating Expert Team, and has been a guest contributor to Mechanical Business Magazine and HRAI's In the Air newsletter. Victor, welcome to the Extra Mile. So, Victor, what are 2 or 3 things that you feel have made you successful in business? In other words, what are some of the keys to your success that somebody following in your footsteps might want to know?
Great question, Caitlin. And I actually, really gave this some thought because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Probably, as we come to the end of the year, it's a good idea to go through and do a little bit of an accounting of, how the year went and how you got to where you are at. Number one would be always telling the truth. I have a horrible memory. If I tell the truth, I don't have to remember what I said. And I know that if somebody has a problem, I mean, being diplomatic is important. But I think that's number one, is always telling the truth. I have a great uncle who has a tremendous saying. It is, if scoundrels knew the benefit of honesty, they'd be honest out of sheer rascality. And I think that we really we don't, especially in business, appreciate how important honesty is. The second is I really try to treat people the way I'd want to be treated in a situation, which, in many cases causes me to pause and really consider what I'm about to say. A little bit of Dale Carnegie training there is helpful. I think in my youth, I probably was more straightforward and blunt. As I've come along in business and I've gotten older, I think tempering my responses has been a big one for me. My mother always taught me, don't spit on people on the way up because it'll hit you on the way down. And so, I'd like to think that I've got a good reputation in business for doing what I say I'm going to do. The ultimate asset is our good name, and so I try to protect that. And then I think the third thing is it's finding what Jim Collins calls my personal hedgehog, and that's what is that thing that I'm passionate about, that I'm really programmed to do, and that I can make a living doing. And I think I struggled with this for a while. I earlier on in my career, I was in many administrative roles, and that was by brute force. Like, I could really buckle down and do those things and get them done, but they gave me no satisfaction, and I was often frustrated. So moving out of an administrative kind of role and more into a leadership role, that was definitely for me a big key to finding success.
Those are great answers. It sounds like there's a lot of life lessons in there as well as business lessons. I appreciate those quotes from your family members. It sounds like some of this was spoken to you as a child, maybe, and has continued to guide you.
I think a lot of great life lessons, and I was fortunate, to be in the right place at the right time to have those conversations. If a person doesn't have access to that immediately close to them, certainly reading biographies of successful business people, also business people that have personalities that are like my own personality. I think this was another thing that I kind of learned along the way, was that you might have somebody who's a tremendous business personality, but you'll never be able to do it the way they did it because fundamentally your personality is different.
Mhm.
And that's not to say that the way they did it is right or wrong or good or bad. And there are things that you can learn from them, but it will be impossible to implement what they did. You might be able to pick out a nugget. And so I happened to be reading some stuff about Elon Musk recently. I guess he's a name in the news, and how he deals with people at SpaceX. I think I could never manage somebody the way he does it. I'm not, he gets great results, but it would be impossible for me. So I think it's finding those people who are successful and their personality aligns with your personality. For me, that's been a key success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's finding those people who are a step ahead, who have built something that you want to build, done it in a way that you can see yourself doing, and staying with it. It sounds like you've had a lot of successes in your business, in your professional life. Over the past year or so, what would you say has been your biggest challenge?
In February, we hit some major headwinds. We had a rebate program, government funded rebate program that we were able to use very successfully for a couple of years. And it was canceled early because it was so successful. And it was canceled at absolutely the wrong possible time. And so we hit we had forecasted, budgeted for 2024 based on the continuation of this program. We did recast our budget, but we probably should have moved faster. It's challenging because we're a cooperative, and so we have to balance the interests of all of our members and do it in a way that's democratic and transparent. So we can't move quite as nimbly as a traditional kind of corporation can. It's always more fun when you're making money. Business is less fun when you're not making the kind of money you're expecting to make. And so certainly having our revenue down and our member companies, sharing their challenges and kind of seeing, we know what's about to happen. It's like we can see the cliff coming. And it was trying to make them aware, by the way, this is, look, do we all acknowledge what we're heading into? And it, depending on their businesses, it was happening at different speeds. So I think that, maintaining focus, and so many famous quotes along this line, but, look to where the puck is going, not where it's at. And, famous Wayne Gretzky quote. And so we know what's about to happen. And then it's like, okay, that's not going to be good. Like where the puck is going is not good. Right now, what? So that takes me to another kind of quote that I fall back on. That's the Stockdale paradox from Good to Great, Jim Collins. Jim Stockdale said, you must never confuse the faith that you'll prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. We know where we want to go. We know what's our plan 3 years out? What's our plan 10 years out? What do we ultimately want to achieve? Yeah, we're about to hit something here that's going to be challenging, and we have to figure out how to get through this period in the cycle, and persevere. And we're going to persevere. We're going to win, but it's not going to be quite the it's not going to look like this. It's going to look like this. It can be a little lumpy on the way up.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty significant challenge when there's these big shifts in the way policy is going, or in specific programs that are running and then not running.
Right.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about the specific challenges that come from your business model, from being a cooperative. Would you mind saying a little bit more about that, about maybe the strengths of that models, and how you have honed your leadership skills in a certain way to be able to make it work for you?
Building consensus is not easy. And we're a democratic, so a co-op is a democratic organization. In Ontario, there's a piece of legislation called the Cooperative Corporations Act that we have to be in compliance with, or our own bylaws. It's complicated. I mean, for a business of our size, if we were a just a single large HVAC contracting business with 30 different locations, like our competitors, we could act in different ways. This is not a top-down kind of an organization. This is very much an inverted pyramid. I've got 30 bosses, right? So this is, so when I came into this, I was fortunate that in my time in wholesale distribution, I worked for a company that was a very decentralized and had a very flat model. And I was in a role that required me to build consensus. My personality type is very much geared towards sales. I'm, in DISC, I'm very high on the influencer spectrum there. So it's about building consensus for me. It's about selling people on a vision and an idea. And I try to play to that strength, right? So it's about generating interest and trying to build alignment. And in a co-op, it's challenging because 30 member companies, 4 committees, a board of directors. Really, when it comes to things that are further out, I have to sell the board on what direction we should go, and ultimately, it's their choice whether or not they want to go in that direction. So, what are the benefits of the model? I think I like to call ourselves, we're progressive capitalists, kumbaya capitalists. We attract people, I think, with a similar kind of mindset. And the culture is a little bit self-perpetuating. I always, when I am prospecting for new members, I make this very clear. To be in a cooperative, you have to be willing to cooperate. And so we do self-select a little bit for companies and owners that are interested in doing that and coming together and collaborating on solutions and bettering their businesses. Somebody who is out for themselves and has a more profit at all cost kind of capitalist mindset probably is not going to get along in this group, right? So there's a little bit, that's a benefit. There's a little bit of self-selection. For me, ultimately, I get to work with 30 business owners that are here, they're local. I'm not working for some faceless owner of a mega corporation somewhere or some board of directors that I don't interact with. And I get to see the success close up, right? When our member companies are successful and they make a difference, I get to see it. I get to be part of it, and to try to cross-pollinate and spread the benefits. When one company does something that works and other member companies take it on, I'll give you just an example. Walker ClimateCare in Cornwall, they've had a We Care Give Back program for years, and I think to date they've given out about $95,000. So each month they write a check to a charity, and they choose the charity. The top teammate of the month gets to pick the charity, and they give $1 each month from each of their We Care maintenance customers, which is like 10% of what they're collecting almost, to a charity of that person's choice. And so I think last month they gave like $3,000. What was really cool is we just talk it up. We talk about like that's an amazing thing, and other member companies start to follow that lead, and they start to do it. And so now we've got 4 or 5 companies that are doing similar kinds of programs in their community. It's not top down. It's not like you shall have a charity give back program. They choose to do it because it's the right thing to do, and they love that they're part of it.
That's neat to see those ideas spread like that, and see the standards kind of raise across the organization. That's really interesting. It sounds like all of this comes back to your first point about Jim Collins and the hedgehog concept, where it's a model that suits you. You're leaning into your strengths, and it's bringing in all these other like-minded people as well. You mentioned that you've had this challenge. Your budget forecast, your cash flow projections for the year changed. How have you personally had to grow, or what did you have to learn that has helped the cooperative overcome these obstacles?
Number one is, as I mentioned, my personality type is influencer. I sell, right? That's where I'm most comfortable. And I think that in sales, you really pick up on the human element of things. And working with people is hard. They have emotions, they have thoughts that you don't have access to, right? It's not like a computer algorithm where this input is going to generate this output. You have no idea when you say something or when you've got an issue that needs to be dealt with, how, what's going on in the mind of the other person. And so I work really hard to separate the issue from the person, and try to figure out how to find mutual success. I'm a big fan of getting to yes and interest-based negotiation. And I think that um, it's useful in all interactions. Every interaction at some level is a negotiation. It is so easy to say, this problem exists because of this person, or that's your problem,
Mm.
and we have to really try to understand where the other person's coming from and separate who they are from the, the position that they're advocating for. That is always an ongoing challenge. And I mean, to some degree, we're assuming, we always making the assumption that people are acting with goodwill. If you're dealing with a sociopath, I guess those rules fall off.
You've got other problems.
You got other problems. You got to be. Certainly you have to be. You can't be completely naive. There are people that are just out to get you, and you got to be on guard. But I think that number one, assuming that everybody is acting honestly and ethically and morally, that we've got to separate the person from the problem. The second is really to focus on the interest and not the position, and then to find options mutually that work for both sides, right? How do we come to a conclusion that's going to be beneficial for everybody? And then the last one, this I try to do a lot, is insist on using objective criteria, and that can be frustrating sometimes when people feel a certain way, right? And they'll say, well, I don't feel, or I don't think that that's right. Okay, well, let's understand, what are the objective criteria? How are we deciding whether or not something is fair or right?
Mm.
Um, and certainly this is going to come up in a price negotiation. This is going to come up in a wage negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
What have I learned? Try to come back to that. And certainly, so in our, bringing it back to the headwinds that we're facing in our program, dealing with vendors. The reality that we have in February is not the reality that we were expecting in December. We need to negotiate price, right? We have to find a way to keep you whole, and at the same time, we have to be able to sell the product. There's been deflation on the sales side. There has to be some deflation on the cost side, or we're not going to. Neither of us will be successful here. So finding those avenues for mutual gain, and really finding it around objective criteria.
That's a great example with the vendors. Do you have any other kind of concrete examples of how you actually apply this in the day to day? Are we talking about, scorecards, policy? How does this look?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, scorecards are a big one. When we do our rock setting, we're putting together our goals for the next quarter, and we're making SMART goals. And one of the things that's most important and that is often overlooked is that there has to be a measurable attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that doesn't become obvious until you get to the end of the quarter, and it's like, well, did we accomplish this or not accomplish this? Holding people accountable for what they say they're going to do, it's hard and it can be unpleasant. And so when you set the goal at the beginning, everybody agrees, do you believe that this is achievable, right? And that's one of the A's, right? That's the way I define SMART. I add an A and I add an R. So I say specific, measurable, achievable, and then I also like to add, like, who's accountable for that. So
I like that.
Is it realistic, and what resources are we going to need to deploy against it? And then timely, when is the deadline? It can't be like a feel good. We've got to have some kind of an objective reality to know whether or not we've accomplished this goal. So I just did a quarterly planning session with one of our members last week. They completed their quarterly rocks, but they were not successful in meeting, in a couple of them, in hitting the metric. Like, there was agreed, this is the metric to be successful, and they did not read that. But we all agreed that they did everything they possibly could, right? So, success in the sense of you completed the rock, you did what you said, all the steps that you were going to do, but at the end of the day, you didn't reach the goal, right? So I think we have to be honest with ourselves and say, like, that's a failure in one respect. The objective criteria was not met, but you did everything that you could have. The world changed around you. right? So, and you weren't able to, for whatever reason, make the changes that were necessary to get to the goal. I think without an objective scorecard, without having that measurable in place, the risk is that people either are self-congratulatory, right? Or they aren't given credit for achieving it because somebody moves the bar at the end of the day. Having objective criteria means that we take the I don't feel or the I feel kind of out of it. That's the
Yeah, it's important. At the end of the day, people should know whether or not they had a successful day, week, month, quarter. So these objective measures sound like they really help enforce that level of accountability and allow you to have better conversations.
when we discuss this for our member companies and we talk about a scorecard with number of calls received, leads generated, the closing ratios, the net margin or the gross, the average ticket, those are things that are pretty objective and easy and relatively easy to measure. For us, it's more difficult because of a lot of it revolves around our members taking advantage of our programs. And so one of the things that I implemented was, after each of our quarterly general meetings, I sent out a survey. And the survey, everything that we do in the course of those 2 days, the members can assign a score between 1 and 5. 1 did not meet expectation and 5 is exceeded expectation. And then we can look at that and say, well, was that successful or not successful? We had 20 people respond and it scored an average of 3, which would be meeting expectation. Okay. This scored a 4.5. Okay. We have to find a way to add some objective value to it. I do the same thing every year in August. For all of the services that we provide, we do an annual satisfaction survey. And I find myself going back to that from time to time. Somebody says, well, I feel that this isn't working. And I said, well, hang on. We did a survey 2 months ago. Let's go and take a look at what the survey says. And it's, survey says, most of the members are satisfied and gave it this score, right? So I hear that you feel that this is not working the way you'd like it to. Why do you feel differently than the majority of the membership? What's different about and trying to again get down to the interest and the issue and get it away from being a feeling? Because I can object if the number was low. Yeah, you're right. I would say your feeling aligns with the other members. There's some action we should take here. But when the number's the other way, you don't align with the rest of them. Why is that?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It sounds like it really gives you that ability to ask a higher quality question to make a better decision.
I really like the way you put that. I think that there are many questions like people will say there's no such thing as a bad question. No, there are lots of bad questions. Lots of bad questions. I think the way you put that is great. A higher quality question.
As a coach, that's one of the things I judge myself on is, am I asking the right questions? Am I asking high quality questions to get high quality answers and make high quality decisions? You shared a lot of your favorite quotes and authors with us already, but I'm curious, if I was talking to somebody in your office or who knows you really well at work, what would they say is your catchphrase? Is there like a certain quote or mantra or phrase that you live by or comes out most often?
When it comes to business discussions, I think the question would be, what are we trying to achieve? That would be the thing that I'm typically asking. I'd be curious if you would ask the team what they would. I might ask the team. We have a team meeting this afternoon, so I might ask them this question back.
Might have to report back.
I might have to report back. I'm going to go with it would be a question. What are we trying to achieve? So when we hit an issue, start with the end in mind. Like, what are we trying to get to? And is this action going to get us to where we want to be? And again, this is part of the learning and growing as a business leader. Don't come with all of the answers. The famous Steve Jobs, if you're the smartest person in the room, find another room. And I think he also said, hire smart people so that they can tell you what needs to be done, what you need to do. And so I really find myself more and more offering my thoughts last, right? And really asking, what are we trying to achieve? What do you think we should be doing? Why do you think that? Does it get us closer to the goal? Starting with the end in mind. What are we trying to achieve?
I'm sure this kind of thing has made you a person that people like to work with.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You've done a lot so far with ClimateCare. What's coming next? Maybe can you tell us just in 30 seconds or so where you'd like to take this in the future?
We want to grow it. We want to make ClimateCare available to more companies across the country. We've been Ontario based and bound for the last 32 years. I think that there's opportunity for us to take the model from coast to coast. Really, the next thing is to grow outside of Ontario. We want to continue to grow in Ontario, but there are many companies outside of Ontario in Canada that I think would be able to benefit from what ClimateCare does. And so taking us national, that's really the goal for what comes next.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for sharing that. If someone is listening and would like to get in touch, who's a good fit to work with you, and what's the best way to reach you?
For prospective members, we look for home service retailers between, initially between $2 and $4 million in annual revenue in service maintenance and retrofit residential HVAC. So that's kind of the starting point. And again, companies that are interested in cooperating. So that would be, companies that want to do that, they're welcome to reach out. They can reach out to me by email. My email is vhyman, VHYMAN @climatecare.com, or find me on LinkedIn, where I'm pretty ubiquitous. So in the HVAC space. So Victor Hyman on LinkedIn. It's a great place to start.
Thank you so much for sharing your lessons learned and all your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Caitlin. Pleasure to see you again.